Saturday is a great opportunity for a get-right game.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 6th year covering U of L, 4th year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Be sure to leave a comment in the YouTube section below because, as you all know, that is a great way to help the show continue to grow. It is much appreciated. Turning the page, focusing on this week's game against Bowling Green following the bye week. This is a great opportunity for a get-right game for the Cardinals. We'll discuss that here in the first segment. We will discuss Jeff Brohm's comments regarding Stanquan Clark's injury timeline, also regarding Nate Kurisky returning this week, and we will discuss Trevonte Sylvester's seemingly imminent return looming. So a lot of stuff to talk about on the show today. But first, today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So I know that there are a lot of people like me that were selfishly against the early bye week because, we got back into football mode after a long hiatus, and then boom, week 3 bye week, and you're kind of just sitting there looking around like, okay, what are we supposed to do? Well, watched a lot of ACC ball, and we discussed what we learned on yesterday's show. But after that win against James Madison, it was clear that the Cardinals had some pretty sizable things to work on offensively. Defense, really good. Offense, far from it in that second game against JMU. So maybe that early bye week, kind of came at a pretty encouraging time, or pretty beneficial time, I should say. So Louisville post bye week, they're focusing on Bowling Green. A lot of season to go. They are 1 game removed from starting the ACC schedule. So this Saturday is a great opportunity for a get-right game against the Bowling Green Falcons. Jeff Brohm met with the media pretty briefly for about 11 minutes or so on Monday, as he does every game week, and told you a lot of things of what we already know, right? The offense didn't play good. Defense was pretty solid. Bowling Green is a team that the Cardinals can't take lightly. A good amount of coach speak. Now, he did give some clarification on the Stanquan Clark injury timeline, and more on that coming up shortly. But he just kind of mentioned that Louisville did a better job this past week and will be continuing to do a better job this week of preparing for the unexpected. James Madison pulled out all the stops against the Cardinals. They pulled out all the trick plays. They played a different style than what the Cardinals had seen on film, and for the most part, it caught the Cardinals off guard. Now, Louisville was able to win that game due to some big plays offensively and the defense stepping up for the vast majority of that game. Now, like James Madison, you can't sleepwalk against Bowling Green. These teams do things pretty similarly. It's offenses that are built on establishing the run and utilizing play action, but James Madison's a better team than Bowling Green. The Cardinals are expected to win this game, and by a wide margin. 26.5 points is the line. Louisville is a 26.5 point favorite, or at least they opened up at that line for FanDuel, one of the sponsors of the show, against Bowling Green. And I think that looking at that number, it seemed pretty reasonable. I thought it might be just a tad bit less because Cincinnati played them earlier in the season, beat them by a couple touchdowns, but it makes sense because Louisville's a better team than Cincinnati. And I expect this Jeff Brohm team to bounce back. You've had 2 weeks to prepare for the Falcons. Some guys are getting healthy and could potentially play. Of course, you are dealing with the absence of Stanquan Clark, but with a bye week to be able to adjust, and now a game against Bowling Green, a team that you are supposed to beat, this is a get-right game. Basically, what I mean by that is getting the offense going, allowing the defense to continue to do what it's doing. Now, of course, it goes without saying, I'm not insinuating that Louisville can sleepwalk. I'm insinuating really the exact opposite. Like, I'm suggesting that the Cardinals, if they handle business, if they get back on track offensively, they're going to win this game pretty handily, very possibly by the spread. Like, I think there's a very real opportunity to blow this spread out of the water. I like this matchup for the Cardinals. Now, it kind of goes back to the point I made before the Eastern Kentucky game. When you are expected to win a game by over 3 touchdowns, what you have to gain doesn't necessarily equal what you could potentially stand to lose, depending on the result. Like, if you beat the team by, let's say, 28 points, let's say you cover the spread, there's not really much you're gaining outside of course, winning the game, right? I mean, that's always important to get in the win column, but the perception doesn't change. Your ranking's not going to change much. You're not changing the way that people think about this team if you handle business. That's just the reality of these types of out-of-conference, non-Power 4 games where you're supposed to win. But if you struggle against Bowling Green, dare I say, if you lose to Bowling Green, which would be an absolute catastrophe, then you have a lot more to lose, right? So you have a lot more to lose than you stand to potentially gain by handling business. Now, that's where it comes into where what you're hoping to see isn't so much from an external reaction. It's what you see on the field internally. Like, I'm looking for the offense to get back in sync. I'm looking for Miller Moss to look comfortable leading the Cardinals offense. I'm looking for the offensive line to be able to protect Miller Moss, but Miller Moss to not second guess those deep throws, to take advantage of what the defense is giving him. And if we see some sort of resemblance of the James Madison defense, if Bowling Green goes all in and they go in that feast or famine mode and they are giving Louisville the opportunities, I need to see the Cardinals make those big plays. Like, it's all about learning from week to week. Like, there's this weird line of thinking out there that teams don't get better. Like, the team you see in week 2 is who you're going to see for the rest of the season. And if that's the case, we need to have a completely different conversation. But I don't think that is going to be the case. I look for this team to bounce back in a major way. And it looks differently depending on who you talk to. But I think the vast majority would say the offensive side. You're looking for the offensive line to protect Miller Moss more in pass pro, to be able to open up more gaps in the rushing attack, because you know that the Falcons are going to try to stop the run, because that's what the Louisville offense feeds off of. So establishing yourself up front, winning the battle in the trenches, dominating the line of scrimmage, limiting penalties, limiting turnovers, Miller Moss looking comfortable, not dropping easy passes, not dropping passes at all. Like, I think it's just from an overall cohesiveness standpoint for this offense, just being able to bounce back, learn from your mistakes, and start to build some chemistry and leave the Bowling Green game on a high, because after the Bowling Green game, your out-of-conference schedule is done until the very last game. And that's against Kentucky, of course. You then go into conference play where we are going to learn exactly what this team is made of. I'm not saying that it's the toughest atmosphere to play in. I'm not suggesting it's the toughest team that you're going to be playing. But Pittsburgh is better than Eastern Kentucky. They're better than Bowling Green. James Madison, kind of depends. I mean, James Madison's a pretty decent team, right? They were inside of the top 40 of the AP poll before the Cardinals played them. So, but it's your first road game of the season. Now, you're playing at, what is Acrisure Stadium now? It's always going to be Heinz Field to me. But you're playing on the road for the first time. So I'd rather the offense start to figure things out now and get into a rhythm and not have to get things going on the fly in ACC play. Like, this offense needs to kick things into high gear. And this is a golden opportunity for the Cardinals to do just that. And really, it has to happen. Like, it's a necessity for me, because I don't want to go into that matchup against Pittsburgh and have it be a defensive slugfest, because truthfully, that's what the Panthers would want. And that's a recipe for losing, especially on the road to a Pittsburgh team that, I mean, they make things scrappy. That's a really solid defensive front and an offense that if you allow them, they're going to get some big time plays. So this is a get right game for the Cardinals. If they take care of business, I think that they win this game pretty handedly. I think they could definitely comfortably cover the spread. But, of course, it's going to depend on which Cardinals offense we see take the field on Saturday at noon at L&N Cardinal Stadium. Like I mentioned, Jeff Brohm met with the media on Monday. One of the very first questions was about star linebacker Stanquan Clark and an update into his injury prognosis. And the answer, although it didn't contradict previous reports, it gave a little bit more clarification, and it is exactly what Card Nation feared. More on that when we come back on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. First, I want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, easy, and honestly, my favorite way to follow along with football. The best part is even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you can still double your money. It's wild. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's the code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville free and available on all streaming services, including YouTube, 5 days a week. Your team every day. We're getting into the thick of things with full Bowling Green prep. The Cardinals following the bye week. And every week that the Cardinals have a game, Jeff Brohm meets with the media. Usually it is on Monday. And he met with the media for just over 10 minutes today. A lot of it, admittedly, was coach speak. Jeff Brohm, amongst many various other head coaches across the country, tell you things that you could probably predict what's going to be said, right? Man, it's kind of how coaches attack press conferences. It's very similar. Not really telling you much that you don't already know. It might be worded in a way that makes it interesting to hear, but you know a lot of the things that coaches say. But I found it interesting because of the injury discussion. One of the first questions, and forgive me for not knowing who asked this question. I want to say it was the very, very first question. It was regarding Stanquan Clark's injury prognosis and if Louisville had more of an idea of what the timeline was going to look like. And for those that didn't see this last week, Matt Zenitz of CBS Sports reported on, Tuesday, that Stanquan Clark had sustained a lower leg injury in the win against James Madison and that he would be out, quote unquote, a while. It was going to be a while before the Cardinals got him back. And he gave like a weird timeline. He said that Stanquan Clark could return well into October at the very least. And I sat there and thought about that. I was like, well, that's really vague. I mean, no disrespect to Matt Zenitz. Of course, he's just reporting what he gets told. But, man, that couldn't be any more vague. I mean, it feels like you're just kind of telling us what we already know and that he's going to miss an extended amount of time. And that's a point to where, okay, at the very earliest, October, late October. And then you have 1 month of the regular season to go. Don't forget, the college football regular season spans from late August to early December. That's 3 months. That is not a long time whatsoever. So a significant injury like Stanquan Clark sustained, being out for the rest of the regular season sounds bad when you hear it like that, but it's like, well, actually, it's not that long of a period in the grand scheme. But Jeff Brohm, I say all that to suggest that Jeff Brohm, when asked about it, said, paraphrasing, that he's probably going to be out for the year. Right there. Boom. To the point. And that's what I mentioned, that the door was closed, but it wasn't locked. So if that door got reopened, it was going to be at the very end of the season. And Brohm did and Brohm added that in at the very end. He said, well, maybe, or not maybe, he said, at the end of the season, he could potentially find his way back. Now, again, I don't see him coming back unless he gets to the point to where he's cleared, ready to play both physically and mentally, and the Cardinals are preparing for a playoff game. That's like the only way that I could see it, because the playoff games are going to be in the end of December, and there's really no reason for him to play in a traditional bowl game because, I mean, you're going to have opt-outs anyway, so you might as well just keep him healthy. But, man, this is a brutal blow. Brutal blow completely for this Louisville defense. Brutal blow for Stanquan, who I thought was primed for an absolute star season in which he would have been an all-ACC level guy. He was an honorable mention last year. He was going to make an all-ACC team this year. But what Brohm said doesn't necessarily reject what Zenitz reported. I think it gives more clarification, not really contradictory, just kind of saying, because Zenitz report made it seem like he could come back and he was likely to come back, because it didn't say out for the year. Brohm kind of said, yeah, he's more than likely going to be out for the year. So I appreciate the honesty. Like, I didn't want to go the rest of the season thinking, okay, could we see him back now against California? Could we see him back now against Clemson or SMU or Kentucky if they get to an ACC championship game? So it just gives you more clarification. It just, I mean, nothing has changed. It, once again, because we got this news, it reiterates that you need the whole entire linebacking room to step up. The two that make the most sense, who are going to be in line for the majority of Stanquan's snaps at that weak side linebacker spot, TJ Capers, former 5-star commit. Like, this is your time to shine, TJ. This is your time. I understand this is your third year within the program, second year of playing, because first year you should have been a high school senior. You reclassified, you were injured, you rehabbed. Respect that. Second year in which you would have been a legit college freshman, you played a little bit early on, but you played behind some pretty solid guys at linebacker. Now, in what would be your redshirt freshman year, actually now it's redshirt sophomore year, like, this is the opportunity. This is where, even if you don't come out right away and play at an all-ACC level, show the potential. Make some plays week in, week out, because one thing's for sure, the Cardinals need it. If you have ACC championship game aspirations, if you have, dare I say, playoff aspirations, you have to mask over this injury. That means TJ Capers has to step up. Caleb Perry has to be a mainstay on the interior of that Cardinals linebacker room. Tennessee transfer that's played a lot of Power 4 SEC football. This is your opportunity to prove that you're that guy. Not to mention, like I said, by committee, so everyone's going to be forced to step up. Trent Carter, redshirt freshman, could be in line for some snaps. True freshman, Cameron White, Caleb Madelo, is this the opportunity for them? Will you see Antonio Watts in some situations play more on the interior? And then TJ Quinn, already responsible to be that leader on and off the field, that veteran guy, the green dot for the Cardinals defense calling the plays. Now your responsibility probably grows just a little bit more because, well, you are the leader. So it's going to take the entire position group. It's going to take the entire defense, because the harsh reality is that Stanquan Clark is your most talented defender, arguably your overall best defender, and one of the top 5 players on this team. That's how good Stanquan is. And that's how severe of a loss this is. Now, it's not to say that the Cardinals can't fill those shoes, but to do so, it's going to take everyone stepping up and making plays, whether it is defending the run, which I still feel good about the Cardinals doing, but more importantly, in pass coverage. Can you defend sideline to sideline? Can you defend the mobile quarterback? Can you spy on the quarterback? That's what I'm saying. Like, this screams TJ Capers. He's got that athleticism, that rare blend of size, strength, athleticism. I mean, this is his time to shine, or at least show us that, you know, he is on the way to shining. So unfortunate news confirmed by Jeff Brohm. kind of felt like that was going to be the case. It was saying it without saying it. I know that with foot injuries or lower leg injuries, sometimes the prognosis isn't clear because there's so many bones and tendons in that area. Sometimes you got to wait for the swelling to go down to get an actual prognosis. So, it sucks. No other way around it. No other way to slice it. But the season goes on, and you have to prepare for the meat of your schedule coming up beginning next weekend. So one piece of good news that Brohm did confirm is that Nate Kurisky is likely going to be back and making his season debut against Bowling Green. It seems like Trevonte Sylvester might not be too far behind. We'll discuss two critical returning players when we come back on this forgot the day, on this Tuesday edition. It's Locked on Louisville, your team every day. Today's episode of the show was brought to you by Game Time. College football continues, and I am just so excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself, with the endless queues, hidden fees, and prices jumping out at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple taps. I saw amazing deals for the upcoming matchup against Bowling Green on Saturday. I'm talking about all of the matchups, not only for that game, but the rest of the season. And you know what? The secret is the prices actually go down the closer you get to kickoff. So if you make an impulsive decision on Friday saying, I want to go to the game tomorrow, please visit Game Time, because you're going to see the lowest prices around. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. That's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. You're tuned into Locked on Louisville, Tuesday edition, final segment of the show. We are continuing to, I'll say, dive into the preview for Bowling Green. We haven't really talked so much more about the matchups as we have the kind of overall storylines, who's available, who's not. And Louisville could have two players available for this game that have not played yet this season. Nate Kurisky is the first one. He's the one that Brohm mentioned. Projected to be the starting tight end for the Cardinals. He sustained an injury in fall camp, and I believe it was a hand injury. It kept him out of the season opener against Eastern Kentucky. It kept him out of the game against James Madison, and they really could have used him against James Madison because of how good he is as an inline blocker. So Jeff Brohm confirming that he's going to be back this week. Now, is he going to play the full amount of snaps? I would imagine, because it's a hand injury, so he's probably been able to maintain that conditioning. So Kurisky, every time the past couple of years that his number was called, he answered the bell. 18 catches, 141 yards, and 2 touchdowns as a freshman in 23. 12 catches for 112 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2024. And I would imagine that he is factored into the mix heavily in the passing game, because I think he has the potential to be Miller Moss's security blanket. And if Bowling Green ends up trying to pull a page out of the JMU playbook and they pull a ton of stunts in terms of getting after the passer, in terms of trying to clog those running lanes, well, that's where Kurisky comes into play. I think that Jaleel Skinner has the upside as a pass catcher, but Kurisky is definitely the better inline blocker. So having him as an extension of the offensive line is going to be much needed, even though you probably won't realize it unless you're just a true diehard fan, a football junkie, and you appreciate the play of the tight ends, because a lot don't. And not having him on that edge, especially when the tackle play's kind of struggling a little bit, it's definitely going to hurt. But having him on the edge is going to help with that tackling, with the tackle play struggling a bit. So Kurisky coming back, is huge. Now, Brohm didn't specifically mention Trevonte Sylvester. Sylvester has been dealing with an undisclosed injury that has kept him out of the first couple of games of the season. But I believe it's his father, Tyrone Sylvester, tweeted out a couple days ago, 4 days ago. Tweet says, "See y'all real soon at Louisville Football, at 502 Circle, at ACC Football." And it's 4 pictures of Trevonte Sylvester in uniform. So having him back will definitely improve that tackle play tremendously. Like, I think one of the things with the offensive line is that, yes, a portion of it is going to be preparation. The interiors play good, but the tackle play has struggled a little bit, as it did to start the season last year. But Sylvester was one of the reasons why the offensive line was able to right the ship last year, is because he stepped in and was fantastic. You look at the season last year, he played in 11 games, 8 starts at left tackle, only gave up 1 sack and 14 pressures and 244 pass blocking snaps. That's what you need from Miller Moss. You got to protect his blind side. You got to protect him overall. And one way to do that is by giving him that protection on the left side. So Sylvester moving to left tackle will allow you to kind of move some pieces around. There's probably going to be a little bit more of a battle at the other tackle spot, but you need guys like Mohamed Musa, Rashid Miller, some other tackle options to be able to step up and improve their play. Because overall, I think the Cards offensive line definitely hasn't lived up to the expectation, but getting, I would say, your second best offensive lineman back, because Pete Nigra is an all ACC center. So I think that pound for pound, he's your best offensive lineman, but Sylvester was incredibly impressive last year, and going up against Pittsburgh, going up against some other defenses, Miami is on the horizon. It's going to be huge to have him back. Now, see you real soon. What does that mean in terms of the timeline? Well, I hope it's Bowling Green, because you allow him to kind of shake that rust off, get back in the swing of things before he goes up against a pretty solid front seven for the Pittsburgh Panthers. But having him back for Pittsburgh one way or the other, I think, needs to be the goal, because of just the improved pass rush that you're playing. Like, Pittsburgh will have the best front seven that you will have played to date by far. It's not even close when you go up to Pennsylvania on September 27th. So